You must die, Kali, Shiva, in order to be born. That experience that happens during pregnancy mimics the orgasmic state. It is tense, 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 and then you come and you're like, What is always located next to a Fernando Garcia funeral home? A motel that you can rent by the hour. Go down Okeechobee. Go down any funeral home and you're going to find people hooking up at the motels that you rent by the hour. And where do the old ladies that are viudas, widows, go to pick up their next husband?
At the funeral.
The funeral home. They read the obituary and they go to the funeral home.
Oh, wow.
Sex and death are always together because sex is orgasm, is second chakra, is life, people. Life, semen, and the egg, conception. What happens the moment the mother gives birth? What dies? She's not a single entity anymore. Her body has now turned into a feeding machine for this alien.
Or aliens.
Or aliens, as was my case. So, death and sex. And then the last thing he calls is the coex systems of condensed experience. Coex system is a specific memory constellation comprising, this is partly like mine, that memory that's in the psyche, comprising in a condensed form experiences or fantasies from different life periods of the individuals. Memories belonging to a particular system have a similar basic theme or contain similar elements and are accompanied by a strong emotional charge of the same quality. That is in alignment with my belief system and my theory. This theme is in alignment with this theme. It's just another one that builds the story. That's why we have the buckets. So now we've seen, we've got the good and bad buckets we're going to get to when we get to the thing. We have our value buckets that start with conception and pregnancy. We have behavior bucket that already started, for instance, with her putting someone first. And then I've now created a new bucket called the fuck it bucket.
Yes.
Which is in alignment with this, which we'll talk about. Okay? But this birth process gives you a theme that happens coincidentally to align with the birth, the conception story. Can you check on that? Okay.
Yeah.
So that is Stanislav Grof. One moment I want to mention, I know I've said it before, but because we're talking about this, it's important. What is happening when the baby is getting pushed out of the womb? The womb is our first house. And the womb is filled with water, or fluid. Symbolically, when we have problems with our home, especially if there's flooding, or when we move, we are reliving instances from this process. Think of all the times we move. I've moved so many times, they have been so traumatic.
I've moved
So,
53 times.
okay, so fucking traumatic. Because that womb is not safe. And we know this is part of Marsha's story. So, the home, the womb, fluid, water, it comes from mythology, symbology. I brought you that book the other day. Water that is toxic, as in many pregnancies, women that are drinking, smoking, not being, taking care of themselves, not wanting the baby, auto-criticizing their bodies, whatever. That water, that pool of water becomes toxic. What is a toxic liquid?
Alcohol.
Alcohol. My theory, that when there is toxic liquid, whether it is the husband was drinking while I was pregnant with my child, or there was a flood, or there was a hurricane, or there was some plumbing issue, or the sewage broke, there was some toxic liquid. Did not have to mean that the mother was drinking. Symbol, people, remember, symbol. Entered the psyche of the child, there is a big possibility that alcoholism or drug use is there because it is associated with the womb environment that supposedly should be symbiotic. Symbiotic is one. We are connected. Codependent. We are one. And in astrology, and wow, the symbol for psychology is Neptune, the planet of codependent and addictions. That's why we're all addicts and codependents and narcissists and victims sitting in this room studying this field. We're all Neptunian. And if you remember the story of Neptune, Hephaestus, he was thrown to the bottom of the ocean as he was a worthless piece of shit. And until he came and gave his mother a gift and said, "Look, mommy, what I made for you." And she said, "Oh, mi hijo preferido, my preferred son." He became nothing. So it is my theory that there is some sort of toxic liquid, whether it's mother drinking, father drinking, the older son doing drugs, a plumbing issue in the house, sewage all over the place.
My mom sending me to jail.
That your mom's sending you to jail, that the symbiotic relationship was dirtied. It was sewage. Therefore, if I'm 80% liquid, I must constantly dirty. And because the propulsion of pushing the baby out is the exact phenomena of the cosmos expanding and contracting. When the cosmos expand and contract, that is a cosmic birth. How new galaxies and planets and things that I don't know about are born is the exact replica of our second chakra, of our vaginal system. Therefore, AA, instead of going to alcohol, where do you go? To a higher power. And you do what you want with that. The idea is to find a healthy mother, a healthy cosmo, a divine. Something that's giving you the same expulsion contraction, but isn't human, is divine. That's the concept there. That is my belief system. Just threw that out there because I read that. That gentleman has a whole school called transpersonal psychology. I told you about him before. His name is Stanislav Grof. He does, okay, So there's a lot of research now being done on psychedelics and the use of psychedelics in healing a lot of mental health. He is one of the major pioneers in that. And you guys know Timothy Leary? Anyone ever hear of the group Moody Blues?
Yeah.
Back in the 60s?
Yeah.
Okay. So there was a guy named Timothy Leary, and he was a Harvard professor. Him and this other guy, which I'm sure I'll mess up, I think it's Richard Alpert, who now his name is Ram Dass. I think he just died last year, if I'm not mistaken. So back in the 60s, in Harvard, there was a lot of research being done with psychedelics. So there's this song called Timothy Leary by the Moody Blues, and it speaks of this. What they used to do was, this Richard Alpert and Timothy Leary, they rented a house down the street from Harvard University. And they would have these LSD parties. And what they were trying to do is that they were trying to alter consciousness. They were trying to give people altered states of consciousness so that they can get healthy. In essence, get out of their conscious mind and unhealthy subconscious and reach more of a cosmic consciousness, a divine connection. It's the idea behind meditation, it's the idea behind yoga. But they were doing it with drugs. Nothing new. We're having a whole resurgence of this now. Stanislav Grof has been one of the major leaders. MDMA is a big thing. I applied. I didn't get accepted to study at the Integral College in California to learn to be a therapist to give these psychedelic therapies. It's very up and coming. I think it's Johns Hopkins University has a whole lab. A lot of therapists are doing these things. And what it does is, in a protected setting with a therapist, you are given these sort of psychedelic drugs, and they give you these different states of consciousness, and you, in essence, have a very high meditative experience. If anyone has ever done mushrooms, it's kind of like that. Now, obviously, certain drugs are done in more of a fun setting versus certain drugs like ayahuasca or shrooms could be done in more of a spiritual setting, and that is going to determine what people experience. And one of the things that it's supposed to do is supposed to show you your ego. So you can see your ego, like you can literally see your Jafar. You can see the beasts, all the eyes that live within you. So now you've gained consciousness and awareness about your true nature that's a piece of shit, and then now you can go back into your daily life and work on yourself, okay? So he was a big pioneer in this sort of second round. And if you guys are interested, I could send you a bunch of information on that. But one of the things that this guy discovered was a certain breathing technique called holotropic breathing. And it takes you into like these lowered states. That's very common in shamanism. In shamanic, what we call in shamanism is called journeying, where we take drums, we breathe at a very low, slow pace, and we go into what are called the lower world, and we meet our ego. So there's many, many, many different ways of doing this. This is a big thing now. It might be something that a lot of your clients are going to want. You do not have to be drug assisting. You could be breath work assisting, something through yoga, or just this sort of holotropic breathing. You could do it with shamanic drumming and journeying. You can Google shamanic journeying, play it, and go home, have a restful place, and go deep into those states. Anyway, Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert were kicked out of Harvard. They were the first two faculty ever to be kicked out of Harvard because they were doing this LSD research. I don't know what happened to Timothy Leary, but Richard Alpert, and again, I don't know if I got the name right, went to India. And he met a guru. And he was with this man for I don't know how long. And he started bringing yoga, meditation, and such to the West. He was one of the pioneers that brought the Eastern philosophies to here. Even the Beatles went with him to India, and then they all started coming, and he was a very wealthy man. I believe his father in New York was like a congressman or something. So they had a lot of land. And they used to all dress in white and have hippie parties and things like that. And what they started discovering is that you do not need the psychotropic drugs. You can get the same effect with yoga and meditation. So that's a lot of what came out of that. There's ecstatic dancing. There's a gentleman named Osho who used to do these dynamic meditations. So there's a lot. Each person is different, but the point of all of these things is to reach the levels of the subconscious that everything is stored from conception and, if you believe, past lives. So that you can start to heal and understand the patterns in which you are building your entire life on. And so what nowadays we hear, I have an awakening, I had an awakening, everyone's woke as fuck. Have you ever seen those shirts? Woke as fuck. Everyone's woke. Okay, yeah. So, what it means, this idea of being so woke, or this awakening, 1111, which is like the code, if you see 1111 on your clock all the time and all that, that is about awareness. It is about having awareness that there are aspects of you, that there's an awareness that you have an ego that perhaps is putting you in situations that are not healthy, that perhaps you have self-destructive tendencies, that perhaps you're judgmental, that perhaps you're not the greatest thing ever born to man, that perhaps you realize that you're a narcissist because you met your parents' needs and you think that you're the greatest thing ever. And so awakening, and what this whole thing about being woke is that you're recognizing these other aspects of self. Now it's gone to a whole other extreme, and you gotta be vegan, and you gotta be a yogi, and you gotta wear $300 Lululemon pants, and that's a bunch of bullshit. This is being woke. The awareness of what you're doing. The awareness of why you're doing something. The awareness of why you create negative situations, even to the degree, if you believe, as a cancer. So that you can prove yourself or your conception story right. All in hopes of what the purpose of my model is to get you, remember this person's made of thread, to pull the thread, destroy that sweater, and knit a whole brand new one on a new story that is woke, that is you, that is built upon awareness. But this whole woke movement is basically this thing with the awareness. And it started way back when these researchers in Harvard, then Ram Dass, he changed his name, he came back, that was Richard Alpert, and I believe he was living in Hawaii just till the other day, I think he just died. And he wrote a very famous book called Be Here Now.
Oh, yeah.
That sums up everything. Be here now. That means be in the present. That means third chakra. That means here. That means don't think about what you got, what you gotta get, what you have, what you wanna have. Be here now. And he wrote a lot. There's a lot of audio lectures. He's great. I really like him. He's funny. But it was the beginnings of what now has just exploded. And like everything in the Western, it turns into a fad, and you really have to pick the parts that you believe and the parts that suit you. So just, if you're into this, just know that you don't have to be everything, okay? Any questions on the language that we are using for the theory? We are now going to move into the actual triad and what you're going to do with a client if you choose to use this. Questions? Okay. So, can you stop that a second?
Oh, snap. Aniela. Stop. I don't want to stop this thing. I can't even see.